Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Michael Parrish, coming to you from Progress Point in Lenexa, Kansas, and I am excited to guide you through this software webcast event today. Here at Morel, we focus on delivering to you, our valued customers and partners, innovations and information in dynamic ways. Today's software webcast will focus your attention on the recent FDA regulation changes taking place in North America fish industry. These regulation changes make a significant impact on Morel's partnership with our valued customers, as we want to ensure you have the right solutions moving forward. We have several experts with us today to provide you with valuable insights into these regulations, whilst also demonstrating how Morel's software provides the right traceability system to tackle them head-on. You will walk away from today's session with a better grounding in the regulations and the software solutions around them. With a critical subject area being focused on today, it is no surprise that you will have some questions. We will have a Q&A session at the end of today's event that we can address those valuable questions with our experts. Please do not hesitate at any time to post your questions into the Q&A chat. You can find that on the right-hand side of your screen. We will make sure to answer as many questions as we can, and we'll follow up with you as instructed in the chat as well. I want to introduce to you today Celeste Leroux, CEO and founder of Virgil Group. Coming to us from Washington, D.C., Celeste is a leading expert in the North America fish industry with a rich history in regulations and helping the fish industry solve these complex regulatory challenges. She will focus her attention on helping you understand what some of these regulation changes are and how they directly affect you.
Thank you for the introduction. It's a privilege for me to be here with you today. I'm Celeste Leroux. I'm the founder and CEO of Virgil Group. We are a startup consultancy and a tech developer. I'll share more about the tech side in a little bit, but I spent the last 12 years in the US government developing and leading seafood policy at NOAA and at the White House. I'm going to very briefly walk through some of the highlights of what has become a very rapidly changing landscape for seafood traceability and regulations around the world. We'll discuss some of what that means going forward, and I'll share an opportunity then for you to engage in developing a solution that we're working on. So last December in the United States, starting with them, the Food and Drug Administration proposed a new traceability rule that is now being finalized. Unlike other regulations you might have heard of, this one requires keeping records. So if the FDA were to ask, everyone along the supply chain in the US or not will need to be able to produce records in a spreadsheet format with all kinds of critical information within 24 hours of them requesting it. This regulation would cover all finfish, crustaceans, mollusks, and bivalves. There's another regulation in the US that hasn't received too much attention, but I think it's really important. It's called the Marine Mammal Protection Act Imports Rule, and it was finalized back in 2016. Its aim is to keep seafood out of the United States that was caught in a way that harms marine mammals, and it doesn't live up to US standards for that. It's a new kind of regulation, and it applies to all seafood. This regulation was actually supposed to become mandatory in December, but it was just extended by 1 more year, citing delays from the coronavirus pandemic. So there's a little bit of a reprieve on that, but there definitely could be industry implications of this, and most of what's going on right now is government-to-government coordination, so it's not very publicly visible. Another one to be aware of, if you produce seafood that's sold in the United States, this is probably not news to you, but the Seafood Import Monitoring Program has been in place for a few years now. It requires traceability data provided electronically through customs for things like the species, the vessel, the fishing gear type, the date of harvest, And then also you have to maintain full physical chain of custody records for that seafood from when it was harvested to when it was imported. The Biden administration has already started to hear concerted calls from the advocacy community to expand and perhaps revise the seafood import monitoring program. So we should definitely expect the Biden administration to take that seriously. Moving on to the EU, they have had an imports-focused traceability program in place for over a decade, but things are also starting to change with them. Last month, Parliament voted to move forward with some really major amendments to their domestic fishing policy, as well as what's called their IUU control regulation, which is focused on imports to the EU. That includes things like mandatory digitization of logbooks and catch records, and new documentation measures and information sharing. Member states, for example, are going to have to keep databases of past violations and make those available. There also will be some new steps required before this becomes a law, but it is moving pretty quickly, so it's good to keep an eye on this one. Moving to the UK, you've probably seen in the news that Brexit had some unexpected and pretty dramatic impacts to their seafood trade. They saw some live shellfish exports blocked completely by EU regulators for failing to comply with their health and safety requirements for imports. The UK also largely adopted EU regulations for seafood harvesting and trade as an immediate stopgap post-Brexit, but that is very likely to change. They have now a chance to revamp their domestic fishing policy and also join regional fishery management organizations and get their own quota for some high-dollar international fisheries, which they're starting to do. I think we should expect the UK seafood market to continue to evolve as some of these early hiccups are being ironed out, but the country is definitely preparing for more significant overhauls in fishing allocations that will start opening up in the next few years. So it's a space to watch both in the short, medium, and long term. Japan made headlines in December when they passed a law that will require documented traceability for domestic and imported seafood. That's not super common. However, all of the specifics for these rules still have to be set through additional rulemaking. Just like the Seafood Import Monitoring Program in the US and the IUU control regulation in the European Union were not carbon copies of each other, we should not expect Japan to just copy-paste one of what these others have done. They're going to create their own rule based on their own authorities and resources and perception of risk. So it's an area to watch in the pretty near term because as they come out with new regulations, it might set a tone for other countries in the Asia-Pacific region. I'm not an expert in China's seafood trade requirements, although I do try to follow them. We have seen specific provinces requiring some additional information to minimize the risk of perceived COVID-19 transmission, including the introduction of scannable QR codes in supermarkets that allow the buyer to pull up all kinds of information about the fish's origin and who handled it and COVID-19 test results. As the worries of this particular pandemic subside, I do not expect governments to fully relax their interest in traceability data because they're getting it now, and in my experience, governments tend to not give up something once they have it. So the move toward mandated traceability to demonstrate legal seafood trade feels totally inevitable to me. I was a major part of this for the United States, and now watching the whole world, it's just moving very, very quickly. And I'm curious to see what this is going to look like. But we have some pretty good clues. So, for example, last week, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization released a 45-page long document that's full of table after table after table of data elements that they feel are critical for end-to-end seafood traceability. If the FAO starts promoting this level of intensive data collection and supply chain management, it is going to embolden other countries to require the same types of things in law. So we should get ready for more and more and more of this. I don't know what exactly we'll end up seeing in terms of enforcement. So far, it's been relatively light. The EU has a card system. The US focuses on regulating importers. We don't exactly know who's going to be regulated by these new requirements, but I do think it's fair to assume that international collaboration will start to be stepped up as more and more of these programs exist. It also feels to me like as we're riding this wave of new and encompassing traceability requirements, we're starting to feel this second wave of pressure on human rights. I don't know what form this is going to take, but it is clear from my work with the NGO community that they want to see traceability include measures for social welfare. This is going to be a very, very big challenge that I don't think we're really ready to tackle yet. So my hope is that industry will have some time to start figuring out what this might look like before governments start requiring it. Now I'd like to switch gears and tell you about what we're doing to help industry comply with what I expect will become an intense escalation of requirements in 2021 and in the years to come. First, if it wasn't clear by now, let me say that your buyers are going to want evidence that the seafood that they're purchasing is legal if they want to continue to access major global markets. They're the ones who could find themselves in trouble for providing incorrect information to regulators down the line, and nobody wants that. Second, data is great, but it honestly isn't going to be enough. If you, for example, share that you purchased seafood from Senegal on a vessel called the Mario 2, that might sound fine to most people, but that vessel's been flagged for using forced labor, and any entry citing that vessel is going to be bounced out of customs. Lastly, finding a clean, fast, streamlined way to collect and analyze and deliver this data about your seafood now is definitely going to pay off in the future. The way to do this is pretty simple. You need to make sure that the data that you collect and pass along all makes sense. It's a little bit harder in practice. So to prove that a fish was legally harvested requires checking that traceability data against a constellation of global data sets, including regulations, environmental factors, and law enforcement. This is all done manually now, and it takes hours, if not days, to complete. I know this because I oversaw the work of about 1,500 supply chain audits when I was in government. And I was very sure it didn't have to be this hard. I don't believe that somebody trying to buy and sell seafood should also have to be a marine biologist, data architect, GIS specialist, regulatory scholar, and watchdog of every illegal seafood list. But that's unfortunately the world that we're already living in. So last spring, I took a huge risk. I left my career in government and pulled together the best people I've ever worked with, and we started building a software solution to this problem. My chief technology officer is the architect of the US government's seafood trade data infrastructure, and my vice president and I worked closely together to support industry compliance with seafood regulations around the world. Within a few months, our concept for this software won the Global Oceans Startup Challenge competition, and now we're part of an Oceans Tech Accelerator program called Maritime Blue, and that's getting us closer to pilot testing, which I'll talk to you about in just a minute. So what we do at its core is check your trade data against environmental, regulatory, and enforcement databases for compliance risk. What you then get is a very simple traffic light readout. We don't see any issues. There's something you might want to take a look at, but it shouldn't hold you up. And there's an error that needs correction before the seafood is bought or sold. Under the hood, we've pulled together massive data sets housed all over the world, listing prohibitions such as known illegal fishing vessels and import restrictions. We can validate your permits instantly, and have developed an exclusive and extensive database of over 15,000 global fisheries that contribute to the global seafood trade. So if somebody, for example, says that they're bringing in tuna from Antarctica, we can help them fix it. And usually that's the issue. It's a typo or a code that needs to be tweaked. We're also working with the top academic institutions in the world to pull environmental data on the location of fish species. That data set alone is the product of tens of millions of dollars of environmental research that has never been made available to industry in a format that speaks your language and delivers actual results at the speed of trade. So our software allows for manually typing in for spot checks and bulk uploads from an Excel file, but what I'm really excited about is this seamless integration with your current data management software in the cloud through an API. By working with Merrill, we can even have your label indicate that all of the fishery data for this seafood in the exact package that is labeled was validated. That's not something that can be done right now anywhere in the world. So we're excited to be the first of its kind provider of something like this. If you're interested in exploring this, please contact Merrill, your representative there, and I look forward to hearing from you in the Q&A section. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Celeste, for that critical insight into the regulation changes for the fish industry. This is a complex topic and understandably tough for our customers to tackle on their own. The expert services that you provide with the Virgil Group can have a big impact and are critical in this time of change. I look forward to tackling those tough questions in our Q&A session with you. Let us now transition into a conversation I had with Dustin, Software Sales Training Manager out of our Seattle office. Dustin is a leading expert with traceability with 10 plus years in the fish industry working with Morel software. We talk about what different elements are required to be traced, how regulations affect this in a software system, and most importantly, how Anova provides you with a traceability solution and the confidence to tackle these regulation changes moving forward. We will even hear from our valued customers on how utilizing Anova made traceability a natural part of their production. Why don't we jump into that conversation now?
Yeah, of course, your primary product is the main thing, and having a good supplier approval process is important, so you can verify that you received what you were supposed to receive. Yeah, exactly. Well, the process control aspect is basically what we consider lots. And that's just a period of time in which you're doing production. So it could be a day, could be an hour, could be a shift. And we go back into the detail level here. So it's important to have as much fine of detail you can have, because that limits your liability. But then also, if it's too fine, then it's hard to manage. Yeah, to me, that means that if you have a problem with one product within your lot, you have to recall the whole lot, which is why we need to have more finer control over our lots. So you don't have to recall as much in the event of a problem. Yeah, we need to have identifiers. We need to be able to mark it in some way, and that could be a label that we put on it, which is fairly common. And in some cases, we use RFID tags, and those they don't have something you can look at and tell what it is, but we have technology to help us with that side of things. Yeah, I mean, you got to have a barcode on it so you can scan it to move it around easily. It's got to you have to have a clear understanding of what's in it by looking at it, like the product, the weight, etc. Yeah. Yeah, the next step really is our process control, right? So we need to be able to track its progress throughout the facility. Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm, for sure. I would say that any of your ingredients, anything that could be eventually consumed, is very important, and also anything that touches the product, such as packaging. Mm-hmm. Yeah, anything that's listed on the ingredients on the label. Yeah. Mm-hmm. My understanding is it's anything that touches the product. So it could be the tray, it could be a liner if your product is directly in the box, it could be that and salt and yeah, I can sink my teeth into that. That gives you massive liability. If you have a great system and poor utilization, in the event of a recall, what are you going to do? Where do I view Anova? It's everywhere in the plant. Well, it's the tool that these companies can use in order to be part of this food chain.
Having Anova food processing software here has just changed everything, because we have a lot of numbers, we have a lot of customers, they want different sizes, they want different labels, they want different size of fillets and packings. We have about 5 hours to do everything before the airplane leaves. You can manage the whole process with the Anova system. I can see exactly what size of fish I need for this buyer. It makes my work so much easier.
For Trident, Anova is a full production control software that provides control from landing of the fish on the dock through primary processing and all the way through finished goods into shipping. Along the way, you get various data from integrated equipment that allows you to do more business analytics and traceability of the product throughout the process.
Anova food processing software is designed to improve productivity and reduce cycle time.
You know, we worked with the Morel development team over the past 10 years to help tailor the software for our industry for fishing. And we've been able to solve other business challenges around traceability and packaging and order control, further inventory management.
Anova ensures reliable data collection, providing full traceability throughout the production process.
I think the business as a whole started to see the value a couple years into the implementation after we probably completed our 6th site. We started to see the ability to transform data, to consolidate data, to integrate data into our ERP system and our BI software for reporting. So you get the benefits of the Anova food processing software for the individual factories. So there's lots of value in what it provides to the plant managers, to the production supervisors on the factory floor. There's a lot of very useful data that helps them run the factory more efficient. They're able to take from the ERP is a lot of times different data than what is important to the guys running the factory on a day-to-day basis. I would say the inventory module is to Trident for Anova is the single biggest gain of business improvement from an efficiency standpoint in Alaska and in some of our value-added facilities. The ability to track and move and adjust inventory in real time and the visibility that it gives us to that inventory as it moves and transverses from Alaska to a customer around the world. We're seeing a lot of change around automation. A lot of new fish processing facilities are getting more and more automated, more and more robotics. You know, I think one of the largest areas of change is around data and business analytics. That was something that virtually was non-existent in the fishing industry 10 years ago. And now you go into factories and you see large TVs with metric. That goes back to the data.
That's great. Let's start in receiving, or one step back. In the traditional paper method of receiving, you see that we have a lot of paper. On the left, we have a delivery report that's handwritten, that says who delivered it, how much it was, etc. And on the right are marking, or identifiers. They're also paper. So that doesn't give us the ability to scan. It makes it difficult to know where the product is, what it is, if it falls into the tub. And a lot of this information is stored within the receiving manager's head. Yeah, they do. So this here is an example of a receiving report that you would get in Anova as a standard report. And you can see who the supplier was, you can see when it was delivered, you can see what the product is, and as an added bonus, you can even see that in this delivery, they over-delivered by 500 pounds. This is a digital record of the one step back. So anytime the product's coming in, we have a report that says it was received at this time, here's who the supplier was, and we know who to contact if there's a problem. Yeah, this one is a dashboard, and it's showing the product as it's been received. It's sitting in this holding area. These are the different locations that we have in the facility. So you see there's a left and right, which could be representative of something that's going to move quickly. And then we also have this one in the back that could be something that's sticking around longer. Yeah, so as the people are scanning the labels that we generate and they're moving it around the facility, we can see automatically in this dashboard as the product moves. And this is something that we can display on the dock so that everyone can see it. Yeah, so he can see exactly what is in his inventory, and when he needs to move it, he knows where it is. Yeah, I think we have a good grasp of what to do in receiving. Our product is in inventory, and we've done supplier verification. The next step in the process, we need process control. We need to get it into production. So in large facilities, it could be a big automated system where you have trimming and overhead lines and all this. In smaller facilities, it could just be a simple terminal or a PDA wireless scanner that allows us to get the product from the receivable side into production where the lots are. Yeah, it's just a little terminal, and that's the beauty of this. It doesn't require big automated systems. It's relevant to the large suppliers and the small suppliers. Yeah, this is showing you the product as it's moving into production. So we can see the source there. It's the raw materials inventory. It's moving into the packing operation. You can see what the product is, which is HOG cod, and how much was moved and what the date was. Yeah. That's an excellent point. So this also, since it's telling us what was moved into production, that's a start point for our yield calculations. Yeah. If we go back to the description in the beginning, it's also supposed to improve our efficiency, and this does that. I think next we need to look at the packing area. So we have produced our product or done all the processing to it. We need to get that label on it again So everything is accurate. So if you look at the traditional method, this is a great example of that. You have all of this pre-printed labels, you have clipboards, you have 3-ring binders, and your production report is handwritten. There's a lot of opportunity here for mistakes. How do you have confidence that the right label is on the right box? Yeah, that's great. So in the previous example we saw in Bay 2, there was a local restaurant order. So once that's been dispatched, they flag that as dispatched, and then we can print the shipping documentation. So you see who the customer is, you see what the order is, you see when it was dispatched, and the contents. If we just sum up what we've gone through, we can get to why we went through this. So we track receiving, we track the process through the facility, we labeled our finished product, and we dispatched it to the customer. So that ties us in with all of those different steps. Yeah, so let's take a look. So we can see our standard traceability report, and this is really the basis of why we did all this. In the top, you see the delivery, which they fished for 3 days. We see the fishing boat that was the supplier. We see they delivered on the 18th of March, and it was all allocated into lot number 2042. So that's our step back. And then our step forward, we have all of our product that we've produced in the bottom and the destinations. So the first 2 lines, we can see that it's not on inventory anymore, and it went to the local restaurant as well as big box store. So that has left the facility. We have some other products that have been allocated to a customer, but they're still on inventory. So if there's a problem there, we can just replace them, and so on. This is the basis of any time there's an audit. So it's your entire step forward and step back for each lot number. So if there's a problem, you can just start here and give you the information you need, where you may have to dig into it, but this is all the high level stuff that you need. This report gives you the baseline of, if there's a problem, you can see everything you need at the high level. So after we see this, then we may need to go into the details more of the lot number or check with the supplier. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then you would also look into the quality control aspect of it if we did that in the facility, to see more details. Yeah, we want to enable you, as well as the other processors, to efficiently manage this whole traceability thing.
Thank you, Dustin, for that valuable insight into how the Morel traceability solution works for our customers and how this solution tackles the track and trace requirements in the fish industry. It was fantastic to hear the testimonials from our many customers using these solutions, as it is always important to show the practical use of our application. I want to reiterate something that was stated during our rich conversation, because it is important for our customers to understand. We at Morel want to enable you to efficiently manage traceability and the regulation changes in the North America fish industry. We are committed partners to solve these complex problems together. It is that time to start our Q&A, and I have Celeste and Dustin remotely logged in, along with Dion, Software Sales Manager out of Seattle, to answer any questions that you have about the FDA regulations and Morel's traceability solutions. Again, please feel free to post all your questions into the Q&A chat, and give us just a moment to get situated before we start the Q&A. All right, we've got everyone logged in, and we are ready to tackle those questions. And we've got quite a few pouring in, so again, feel free to keep them going as we're doing this Q&A. Let me just start with one, and I'm just going to choose one randomly on here. This question is, what do I need to have in order to have Anova traceability? And I'm just going to go ahead and tackle that off the gate. It's an important question. So with Anova traceability, it's really no license or extra module. It's just part of the core delivery within the product itself. So it's really the functionality grows with the utility of Anova. And like the conversation that Dustin and I were having, you know, it can start from receiving and go all the way through dispatch. But to just clarify that, you know, Anova traceability is just the heart and soul of the system, and then there's other deliverables within that. Let me keep digging through here. Got some more questions. Let me actually, Dustin, are you available?
Yeah.
Perfect. I got a question that I think would be a good one for you to tackle. This one is asking, what is the smallest system that can give me full traceability?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you know, with a smaller size company, you can do an entire traceability system with one station. You know, you just have to make sure the receivables and the finished product is all tracked at that one point. And then also, you know, as the size of the operation expands, the software can expand with it. So we can add additional functionality when it gets more complicated.
Makes sense. And Dustin, just to kind of roll with this question a little further, I'm wondering, with your rich history in implementing these solutions, any like best practices or methodology to do that?
Yeah, once the system gets larger, you know, there's basically two approaches. You have the horizontal and the vertical approaches I like to use. So if you take the horizontal approach, you're taking one sort of process and you're starting with that. For instance, you take the entire receiving process and you start there. And then as that part has been implemented, you kind of expand down further along the chain. And then you can also take it from the horizontal approach, where you're taking one process or one department entirely through, And then once that has been settled, then you can kind of expand to the other departments and lines.
Fantastic. And I think that's definitely something we would all be more than available to walk through with someone who's really interested in tackling that journey. Let's choose another question. We've got one here. Dion, do you mind helping me out on this one?
Yeah, fire away, Michael.
Okay, I've got one here asking, does your software support the GS1 standards?
Yes, good question. All of the GS1 application identifiers are built right into the Anova menu system, which makes things really easy when designing a GS1 barcode for your labels. Anova can also handle other codes like the QR codes which Celeste mentioned earlier, and even RFID, depending on the customer's preference.
Yeah, so it's got a lot of kind of built-in functionality, labeling definitely being one of those platforms, and then even the advantage of connecting to the equipment for such activities as well. So yeah, important parts to that kind of traceability mechanism. We're continuing to roll in some questions. Dustin, I'm going to come back to you if that's okay.
Yeah.
This one kind of got covered within the conversation, but probably good to just reestablish. This question is asking, what is the process for a lot changeover in your system, in the Anova system?
Yeah, that's good. So let's just review slightly. So our lots in the system is basically a piece of production. So as your production day goes on, we're linking the deliveries into those lots of production. And the changeover process can be handled many ways depending on what works best for the organization. You can have an operator select the lot specifically when they're changing over. We can have rules associated with changing it automatically and creating new lots as the shift changes, for instance. And then also we can forward those lots in a sort of a pending state as you're assigning raw materials into the production. And then when they're ready to do that changeover, they just accept it.
Okay, makes sense. Dustin, to keep you on the line, we've got another question, and I can kind of see how this might roll into these lot change like mechanisms, and it's a good question to clarify. So this one is, how much custom coding is required versus how this system functions out of the box?
Yeah, that's another great question, and it's it's important to know that when you're moving into a system such as this, because maintaining that code is inconvenient to say the least. And I'd say that we like to call it configuring the system rather than customizing the system, because there's all these tools built into the system, and it's the sort of the job of the service resource that's assigned to it that basically configures the system to operate the way that the business needs. So I would say there's very little, if any, custom code required at all in these solutions.
Maybe to spin that answer a different way is, we really approach that as a partnered approach, right? So we have a platform which has a lot of out-of-the-box delivery that we tailor, as you were saying, Dustin, to those business needs. So it's just working collectively to really tackle those things.
Yeah.
Let's move on to another question. We're getting lots of good questions in here. Let's see. Actually, here's one. Maybe I'll just go ahead and tackle this one. I like these types of questions. I have labeling practices. Do I need a traceability solution on top of that? Yeah, so it's kind of two different deliveries, if you will. The way I would explain the traceability system is it facilitates like that log, and we were kind of showing that in that discussion, Dustin, with those reports and everything. So it's the collection of the events that took place, where labeling is like a physical mechanism that's placed on, the product or the boxes or what have you. So they are something that you need in sync with each other, but I would argue, yeah, it would be best to have both, especially with these regulation changes too. Dion, got a question maybe for you if you're available. This one is asking, what does Anova offer me besides track and trace?
Yeah, Anova is a fully blown production MES solution, which means that it can manage the full supply chain from the ocean to the fork, as they say in the industry. Besides traceability across the whole supply chain, Anova manages receiving, inventory, storage, work in process, final goods distribution, and obviously labeling and palletizing. Furthermore, Anova has a quality control module for food safety and compliance, and various very important real-time management reporting like yield, downtime, overall equipment effectiveness, orders, shipments, all of them providing that critical information for decision support and continuous improvement initiatives. So truly a full system.
Very good. And Dion, where I've got you, maybe this would be another good one for you. This is asking, how can you help me ensure we are compliant with regulation changes?
Well, we stay abreast of the regulations, and to that extent we partner with companies like the Virtual Group, who are experts in the field. Anova our reporting is a tool-based system, and we can set up customized reports exactly the way that the FDA or any of the other regulators require this. So that report is set up. The data that feeds that report is real time. So it's actually just pressing a print button, and your report is kicked out, totally compliant with the regulators.
Yeah, and it kind of folding back to, what's custom coding and what's best practice, it all kind of revolves around that working together, that we can come up with those solutions, right? Speaking of Virtual Group, there's actually a question about this. So Celeste, I think you would probably be the best to answer this. I've got a question here that is asking, how do I find out more about the Virtual Group and what they do?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the question. You can learn more about Virtual Group and our offerings for industry on our website. That's www.virtualgroup.com. If you add /software, you'll get directly to our software development. You can also email me directly if you have any specific questions at celeste@virtualgroup.com, or you can fill out your contact form associated with this webinar and we can circle back with you that way.
Yeah, good point. Celeste, just a question actually from me. I'm kind of curious. What are you wanting to hear from, say, the audience listening today, and what you really want to focus on? Is there anything particular? I know you said quite a bit within your segment, but I'm just kind of curious within the Q&A.
Mm-hmm. There are so many things going on right now in the world of seafood traceability, compliance, and regulations. And as we start building products that will support industry's needs, we really need to know from that larger landscape which elements of that are most nerve-wracking to you. Where do you feel like you most need support with compliance? Where are the regulations feeling the most onerous, so that we can all develop tools that will help make those very easy and streamlined for you to keep your compliance in order? Very
good. Well, I hate to admit this, but there's still some questions pending, but unfortunately we've run out of time for today's software webcast. This was a really large topic, and to be honest, probably the tip of the iceberg. So not the end of the conversation with you. If we were unable to get to your question, or you'd like to speak to one of our experts, please follow the instructions in the chat to complete our contact form, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. We are always happy to get any information that you need, and we really look forward to hearing from you and working with you. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to our experts for their valuable insights as always. Please look for more information on today's topic in the coming days. Be sure to look at the ILCS zone for today's video, and find your way to Morel.com to see the next upcoming software webcasts and the Morel live events throughout this year. That being said, We'll see you next time.